Well, welcome into another exciting episode of the Scene Projects. I'm your host, Bubba Starts, and with me today is author and choreographer Alexandra Beller. Welcome to the show, Alexandra.
Thanks for having me.
I am thrilled. It's not often that a small town South Dakota boy gets to talk to someone from the big city. You are in New York City, and just I was already admiring the lovely architecture behind you, the old houses, and you said you live in a beautiful brownstone. But before we get into all of that, I want to give you a chance to just kind of introduce yourself to our listeners and to me, and we'll take it up from there.
Thanks. I'm Alexandra. I have been an artist for a long time. First a dancer, then a choreographer. Somewhere in there, I started really loving the art of teaching and got a bunch of degrees related to teaching and choreography. And the main one is about how to analyze the human body for movement, which took me into theater and doing private work and mentorship with individuals to try to heal their bodies and make their bodies the most efficient vehicles for their life they can have. And then I started writing a book about a lot of this material, which is about to get turned in next week to Bloomsbury.
How exciting. And I think as a society, we now know that our traumas and things live in our bodies, right? They have physical manifestations inside of us, and the only way to really work through those is movement, right? We talk so much about working out these days, right? And being healthy in that regard, but I don't think that many people hit on the effects of dance. So I think that's really beautiful how like the choreography and like that previous life it seemed like spilled into teaching and then spilled into, oh, we can actually be like healing people with all of these skills that I have. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's been a really nice fluid trajectory in my life, and I am not sure I'll be able to really figure out what happened until I'm, really close to the end, which, hopefully I'm not right now. But I feel like when I look back, I feel like I've had 18 different careers, but they each linked pretty gracefully to the other. But what I was thinking when you just said working out is, and nothing wrong with working out. Working out's great. Totally appreciate it. People should do that. And sometimes it actually does the opposite. It creates this like shell of us that doesn't allow for some of that interoception, which means how you feel the inside of the body. And again, nothing wrong with working out. I'm not criticizing it, but we can sometimes do it in order not to be in touch with the body, which sounds contradictory or counterintuitive, but there's a lot of very subtle information that can be heard with softness that cannot be heard kind of through the noise of muscularity and trying and making and doing and being and, all of that stuff that's gotten conditioned into us through hypercapitalism and that productivity, and I have to be better and do better and make more and get ripped, and that mentality sometimes can keep us from listening to the darker, softer, smaller, littler things inside. And I think that's where a lot of the healing can come from. So sometimes it's not about doing more, but like resting and being still and listening to just what comes up in stillness.
I love it. I think, especially with a podcast that focuses a lot around independent musicians, we are all about that very raw masculine energy in a very feminine art form, right? A lot of it is loud and just kind of giving it to you full force, right? Especially with, a lot of us are country musicians out here. Rock and country are our predominant kind of musical genres. So it's very easy to get caught in that. For me, I work around, sports teams and motorcycle rallies and music festivals. So it's very hard to find a quiet, still place. But a great example, I feel like I just kind of lived it this last weekend. We were at a festival called Rock the Country here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I mean, it was 30, 40,000 people, right? Huge acts, Kid Rock, and these big bombastic bands. And my wife and I found a shady place underneath their little, sunshades they had built out. we dropped our backpacks and our blanket on the ground right there, and we sat back in the back in our own little world and just enjoyed the show from there. And it was almost better for us than being up in the front, pushed against pushed against the grates and being inside of all that energy. We both feel a lot more comfortable on the outside, observing and there and kind of feeding off the energy, but not fully invested into it.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes that loudness can be cathartic and really great. Sometimes that can be an intuitive place to get authentic. And it's also sometimes not about like what the outside world is doing, but how you're listening to the inside world while you're moving through it.
Well, and how much more necessary I feel like in a place like where you live than where I live. For us, it's very easy to find silence, right? We can go out on the farm. My in-laws have 1,000 acres that they farm out here. It's very easy to walk into the middle of the field and hear and see nothing,
Yeah.
right? But much different for most of citizens of this planet that live around major city centers where it never stops. There's always noise and interference from the outside.
Yeah. And I think many of us are envious of that, ability to find external quiet. But I think also what I'm talking about is this choice to find internal conversation. And it can be easier when there's quiet outside, but theoretically, you could do it in Times Square too, because what I'm really thinking of is the amount of noise we make inside ourselves. And you could be in the middle of that beautiful field that I'm envious of and still be making all that noise inside. And that noise is your shame and your inner critic, like making enough noise that you don't have to listen to what the stuff is at the deeper levels. And so that doesn't necessarily require external quiet, but it does require quite a bit of bravery.
Well, and a whole different skill set that most people aren't equipped with. That introspective nature is not especially in a hyper capitalistic, not just our society, but the time in which we are all living right now, right? You can't get any more information coming in, right? We are all on overload all the time. So we've kind of forgotten those skills of just, how do I feel, right? And not just physically, but how do I feel like as a human being right now? How do I feel about my life and where it's going? And sometimes it's hard to quiet those feelings of how your life was. A little bit about me, Alexandra, because I know you don't know me. Our listeners know a lot more, but I've been to prison. I've experienced homelessness. I've done all these things. So I've kind of like, I've lived through these things, and it would be very easy for me to busy my mind with the negative thoughts, right? Of, oh, well, you're never going to be anything because that's who you were, and you're never going to get where you want to go because of these things in your past. Where nowadays, like if I don't tell anybody about it, you would never assume that about me, right? So it's being able to let go of that negative self-talk that we have, right? And I think that's a skill that's even harder for people to grab onto now just because you're bombarded with information and being told who you should be and what you should look like and what clothes you should be wearing and just all the things.
And I also think, thanks for sharing all of that. I also think that it's really challenging to live with contradiction and to have feelings that don't fit each other. And I feel like we're always being pressured to reduce down to one thing. I'm confident. I'm that, but you can be insecure and you can have insecurity and confidence in the same body. And I feel like this pressure to just be one thing that a lot of society is like, you have to be this. And if you're not this, you're that. And all these binaries that we face they're not realistic because, so for example, when I was at a certain point, I essentially folded my dance company as a performance company and created an education company out of it, and I started choreographing for theater. And I was telling a friend that I was having some grief about letting go of my dance company because it's something that I had done for 16 years. And they were basically like, first of all, oh, well, then don't do it. If it creates discomfort or you're having bad feeling about it, you shouldn't do it. And I was like, no, 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 it's the right decision. I want to do it. And I'm feeling sad and I'm feeling a sense that like it didn't do everything I wanted it to do in the world. There's some sense of pride in it. And then I also have a sense that it failed in some ways and I feel sad about it. And this was like a high level, evolved, emotionally intelligent friend, but she was like trying to talk me out of feeling that something had failed. And I was like, I'm okay. I'm saying this is a real feeling. I feel sad that I didn't get to accomplish everything that I wanted to. There's a feeling of sadness and failure in there. Also feel really proud. I think I made a lot of, she was like, you made so many things and you toured and you did this. And I was like, I know all those things. And I feel good about all those things. And I feel sad about these things at the same time. And I'm sad about this decision, and it's the right decision at the same time. And we're very complex creatures, and society's always telling us to reduce down to a single thing, and that thing is on a binary against another thing. And it's it's not a way to live an authentic life. Like we have to reject that reductionism. And I feel like I've lived my life as a dancer in a body that was not a traditional dancer's body. I was always bigger than traditional dancers. And people always wanted me to be this like, oh, you're so confident, you're this role model, and you love your body. And I was like, when did you ever hear me say any of those things? I've never talked about my body. You've taken a look at me in a big major dance company as this like success story, and you've decided that I feel a certain way about myself, which is completely untrue. You have not asked me how I felt. You've never heard me say how I felt. So you've made a huge assumption about me because it's a story that you wanted for yourself. And because there's a binary for you, either you're totally confident, you love yourself no matter what you look like, or you're like a pile of tears in a corner hiding yourself because you're not what society expects you to be. And that's the binary. And it's total BS because I plenty of times did not love my body, did not feel confident or secure in it, and at the same time was able to walk onto an opera house of 3,000 people and, a small costume and dance and be really proud of my body and what it could do and passionate and expressive and real. And also insecure and a little ashamed and fearful. And those things could coexist. And that made me real.
That's beautiful. That's it's so funny that we look at the world these days as it has to be, like you said, that binary. It has to be black or white, when in reality, the entire world is just different shades of gray. Like it's all these different shades and mixes of it. And it's like in a deeper level, we all know this, but we still try to be this reductive, that it has to be this, that a dancer has to be confident and love themselves. And they created this entire story for you just from seeing one performance, right? And for someone who doesn't necessarily speak during their performances, right? It's a lot different than me going up as a songwriter and standing on stage, and I'm able to tell you the story behind the song before I perform it. You're not getting that. So, yeah, I'm sure, I probably hundreds of thousands or millions of people have a story in their head about who you are when they see you on stage that is not even close to the real thing.
Yeah, and if I had forced myself to take on that mantle that they wanted me to be, I'm so proud. I love myself so much. I'm great. You can't criticize me. I'm badass and I'm, the best. Right? If I had done that, I would have gotten more and more out of touch with how I actually felt, who I actually was. And all that does is compound trauma in the body. So when you said trauma lives in the body, and movement is how we speak to it. And when we can speak to it, we can heal it. That movement requires authenticity. I cannot be this tough girl body. Nobody can get me down. I only have one set of feelings and they're all what we'd call good, right? That's not real. And so I'm getting farther and farther away from my real self, which means my trauma has nobody to talk to because I'm not in there. I'm out here presenting something.
Alexandra, was there a specific moment in your career where you wanted to shift from the performance side to the education side? We kind of just touched on you closing the dance side to be in education. Was there a single moment or was it something that built over time?
Everything's been pretty smooth in terms of my, like, I've really cross-faded all of my career choices. While I was performing and dancing, it really started wanting to choreograph. And so then I left the company I was dancing with and started choreographing, started my own company, but was also performing in it. And then during that, I was like, I'm not able to make the work I want to make when I'm in it. So I stepped out of it and I would still choreograph like solos for myself. And then I just found I lost the bug to be on stage. Like I just didn't feel the need to be witnessed. I feel like my artwork had gotten clear enough that I felt like I was being seen when people would watch my art, even when I was not physically in it. So then that became fine for me. And then so many of the ideas that I was like passionate about working with as an artist, I started bringing to other artists and getting their ideas and talking to them about their art. And that started to feed a lot of that energy too. I still love making art myself, but I started becoming really enamored with how many different voices there are in the world and how those voices don't always have access to the world. And how could I help people bring their voice more clearly out into the world? Their artistic voice or their actual physical voice, in the case of actors.
I just love how because I don't necessarily I think of dance as art, but I didn't think of the choreography as an art form, right? Until you mentioned, and I was like, oh, of course, you're a painter, but you're painting with people's bodies and their movements, and what a beautiful, beautiful way to look at it. And I'm sure there's choreographers out there that don't necessarily look at it the same way that you do, right? Everybody's kind of coming to it from a different. You're so introspective and so in the art, and it probably comes from decades probably inside of it now, a long performance career, now I hope a very long teaching career. When did the transition happen in years, in the timeline? When did that kind of performance bug leave you and it was just like, I want to be on the other side of this now?
Let's see. 5 years ago, I performed for a colleague of mine, and I told her it had been 8 years since I'd been on stage. So it's been about 13 years since I was like really regularly performing. And then it has to be something that feels like a really unusual project to make me want to bite into it as a performer. Um, so I would say that in the last 13 years, I'm actually Sunday about to perform something, but from another friend, colleague, but it's really been 13 years.
Now you seem a little nervous almost about getting back out and performing. Do you feel like kind of letting that go for so long, kind of reinvigorated that it gave you time away from it? Because and I'll speak from personal experience as a songwriter and someone who goes out and plays 3 4 hour bar gigs, right? We're playing at a bar and grill. They're not real fancy gigs. We're not performing at theaters on Broadway or anything, but it can get to feel like a job, right? That you're just kind of going through the motions again, and you're not really doing that. You get burnout, right? I'm sure is what we would call it in today's society. Do you feel like kind of letting that go a little bit gave you chance to kind of recharge that side of your personality?
I wouldn't call it a recharge, but what I would say is um, I think it emptied the need. Like I kind of drained out the need that was behind performing. And now every once in a while, new interests in performing come up from other places because that old need, which I think to me did have a little bit of trauma in it, like not being seen much as a kid, I think gave me this feeling of like, I don't know if I exist if people are not watching me. And I think as I healed that, that reason for being on stage went away. And then there was sort of an emptiness, not in a bad way, but just a kind of stillness around it. And then in that stillness, I can hear like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting idea. I would play with that in front of people. That would be cool. And the thing that I'm actually grappling with now, ironically, in terms of your show, is I've always had stage fright to sing. And so, and I started learning guitar just before the pandemic so that I could, because I would sing to my kids, and that's no problem. That's easy. And I really enjoy singing, like my body really enjoys singing. But the idea of putting it out in front of other people without a dance, like I've had to sing in a dance performance, and that's fine, no stage fright. But singing like at a microphone in front of people who are just there to hear the singing, that's terrifying to me. So I've been trying to work my way into getting on stage to do that because I feel like that would be a breakthrough for me. So I think what happened is that my old reasons for performing went away, and it's not that they got reinvigorated, but something else a little healthier came in their stead.
A curiosity.
Yeah.
I find that for myself. So we started this podcast just a year and a few months ago. So relatively new to the podcasting, broadcasting world, but I've always loved deep conversations. And I really didn't realize what this podcast was going to be until, maybe the beginning of this year and getting into it. I knew we had something because there's no podcast out here, not just in South Dakota, but in the Midwest in general, right? There's just not a lot of people, so there's not a lot of artistic people that are going to go chase this. And we don't even have like weekly arts magazines here, right? So we're kind of becoming a hub for our local Midwestern people to kind of come to meet the players and to find out a little bit of what's going on. That's an ever evolving kind of thing, but it's taken away the need for me to go on stage and sing because the same things, right? I was like, I need to be heard. This is how I feel, validated in my life is this. Because when I talked about experiencing homelessness, well, I was never really destitute because I always had a guitar on my back, right? Like my family, I grew up around music. I grew up playing guitar since I was 12, 13 years old and singing all the time. So that was always kind of like my reach back to feeling that was the place I was most comfortable with, especially when I say homeless, but I was a vagabond, right? I was hitchhiking around and experiencing life. I was 19, 20 years old. So like where I felt most comfortable was when I had the guitar on, when I'm playing, no matter where I was at. And now it's changed to, well, I don't need that anymore. Who am I now without that side of the of Bubba, right? Where are we now as kind of Bubba the podcaster who's busy kind of bringing other people out and asking interesting questions and it all comes back to just curiosity. I'm so curious as a human being. It's probably why I was on the road, as a hitchhiker, just because like I don't want to settle down. I want to see this and I want to see that and I want to do it all. And I'm a little sad that my travels never brought me to the East Coast, right? I never got to experience New York City as that person, right? I think I would have had a great time, albeit probably not for long. I didn't do very well in Los Angeles either. It's a few too many people. But you talk about sadness. I loved that part of my life. But is there some grief attached to that? Is there a little bit of, hey, you could have had a different life or done these other things and but I don't regret doing what I had done, right? It's all made me so it's poised me for this part of my life. And the being curious part has never left me. So yeah, I love it.
You know, you used that word regret, and I think that that's such an important word inside this conversation because, I don't feel regret for any of the, well, I was ruminating on regret when you said it, and I was thinking like, yeah, oh, I don't believe in regret because, every choice brought me here, etc. But then I feel like there's this expectation if we say, I don't regret anything, that I don't have any sadness or I don't have any wishes. Like, I wish I had treated that person with more kindness. I wish that I had spent more time with that person. It's not regret, it's sadness, right? I feel sad that I wasn't the person that could have done those things at that moment.
Right. And the two terms don't have to be inextricably linked to one another.
Yeah. And, I think we can feel, I don't wish I had done anything differently. Even the things that I can see, oh, if I had done that differently, I might have saved myself some pain or grief or stress or loss of money or whatever it is. But that's what I did at that moment. I'm not going to regret it, but I do feel sad that I didn't have the you know, validation or the confidence or the, sense of myself to stand up for myself in that bad relationship or, whatever it is. It's not regret, but I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for that old version of me that I didn't have more resources or more help or more self-assurance or something to get myself out of a bad situation. And I'm also proud of that person for surviving it and getting me here, even though I had to climb through some stuff. So, I have even then contradictory feelings about that person. Like, what an amazing person that was that like survived all that and got me here. And oh, I'm sorry for them. Like, I wish that they had had an easier time of it. I wish that could have been easier for them and they could have had more community around them or whatever it is. And I can simultaneously feel those things. And I feel like people want to talk you out of that too. Like reduce it to, oh, but you can't regret where you've been. You wouldn't be. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm not regretting it, but I am sad for that person. Doesn't mean I have to be like, yeah, yay, my really hard, struggly, survivally life. Yay, that life. No, it could have been easier, and it wasn't. And I'm amazed with myself that I got where I got.
And I can also be a little sad that, at some points I didn't take the easy road. Like we can
Sure.
do both of those things.
Wish I'd known better here or there. I wish I'd, believed in myself more here or there. And I'm also, yay me for getting here through there, and they coexist. And when we force ourselves to only believe one of them, it's just shutting down the authenticity.
You said something several times now, like I feel bad for that person, and you're talking about you, that previous version of you. And I think so many people are so trapped inside of their ego, right? That I well, I did that. Well, I mean, a version of you did that. You're I'm not the same person I was yesterday, right? And none of us are. And I think there's a mentality there that I believe you and I share. Obviously, maybe it's a performer artist thing, right? That most people in our fields would have a little bit of that. But the introspection, most people just don't even have the skills to be able to go, I feel bad for that previous version of me, right? People can't even get to that point. It's poor me. It's
Yeah.
poor. Well, yeah, but it didn't happen to you today. It didn't happen to this version of you. It happened to that version of you.
Yeah,
That's
and that version of you, was theoretically doing the best they could with what they had and, didn't make the choices they would necessarily make today. And that's okay. I understand them. I have empathy for them. I have some sadness for them. But even now, like I don't feel like I have a singular I have lots of parts, right? Just sitting here right now. And some of those parts do things that make me feel really proud, and some of those parts do things that frustrate me. And, it's about having a conversation with my different parts right now. And, the parts that are doing things that frustrate me are not trying to derail my life. They're not being attended to in some ways right now, right? So for me, even now, it's a conversation with like, why are you sabotaging this? What is happening? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to get? Like, we don't do anything that's bad for ourselves arbitrarily, right? We don't drink too much arbitrarily. We don't, get sucked into addiction arbitrarily, stay in a bad relationship. We do it because we're getting something out of it, and that something needs a conversation, right? Because just like we said with the performance, like, oh, well, that need to be on stage was really from something else, and when that thing got fed, that need changed. And it doesn't mean you can never be on stage again, but it's just not for the same reason. And I think sometimes we need to be able to have a conversation with some of these parts that are not doing things in our best interest and say, hey, what's going on? What is it that you need that you're not getting? What am I not hearing you say? What am I not listening to? Oh, you need more rest. I'm pushing too hard. Or you need to be away from these toxic people, or you need to get off social media, or whatever it is. Like, something's happening that's causing distress in the ecosystem. And I can see because something's not functional in my ecosystem. I'm not taking good care of myself, or I'm not exercising, or I'm not um having healthy relationships, or so so what's going on? Because I can't just force myself to do better things. For some reason, part of me doesn't want to do better things, doesn't want to take good care of myself. So does part of me not feel like I deserve care? Does part of me not feel like I deserve that rest, or that sleep, or that good food, or that exercise, or healthy body, or to be around people that love me, or right, like, so that's how I start to get to talk to my trauma parts and heal them, so that they can collaborate with me on wanting to go to bed on time. Like, I find, I was talking to my partner about this last night. I sometimes get a little like toddler energy at bedtime because I've been working so hard all day, and I don't want to go to bed and wake up in the morning and I have to go back to work, and now I want to stay up and watch TikTok or something. And I was talking to that part last night that was saying that to me, and I said, "You can stay up and watch TikTok. You're an adult. Like, if you want to stay up and watch TikTok, you can. You're gonna be tired tomorrow." And I realized that the part of me that was saying, "I don't want to go to bed," actually is not the part that gets up in the morning and goes to work. And so they didn't really care that I was going to be tired for work. And I was like, "Oh, we're not agreeing enough as an ecosystem, right? Like, that means I'm not taking that part of me to work. That means I'm shutting part of me down to go to work. That means that sometimes in the morning, that part of me wants something like, I want to stay in bed and have a hot chocolate and watch TV. And I'm like, shut up, get back in there. I got to get to work." And when I say that enough times, that part doesn't really care about work, right? Because they're never getting to do what they want to do in the morning. So I need to have more talk with that part. And every once in a while, certainly not every week, but every once in a while, I do need to say, you know what? I am going to take the morning off and make a hot chocolate and get in bed. That's what I'm going to do, because that's what part of me wants to do and has been yelling at me every morning for 3 weeks to do it. And you know what? They're going to get what they want this morning.
Oh, and there's always time to get the things done that need to be done. And I think that's another kind of byproduct of the society that we all live in, is that everything just needs to be immediate. And in no way has your life taken that path. Your life is like a slow flowing river, it feels like, and it's going to take its time and evolve at its own pace anyway. But sometimes you got to let the toddler out and take him to the park.
Totally. Totally.
So you got a book that you're finishing. I'm assuming it's probably finished now and getting ready to get shipped off. Can we talk a little bit about the book and before I let you get out of here?
Yeah, it's called The Anatomy of Art: Unlocking the Creative Process for Theater and Dance. And I've taken 12 aspects that I think are fundamental to our creative lives, but things that we don't necessarily look at individually. So, time, space, meaning, relationship, environment, process, facts, faith, communication, material, context and culture, and priorities. Those are the 12 topics. And I feel like each one of them is a juicy place for us to explore as creatives. Like, if I just spend some time really thinking about my material, or I spend some time thinking about um, the environment that I create, or that in which I create. And so it's if you've ever heard of the artist's way, it's like a more specific artist way. It's like an artist way for artists. The artist's way was for everyone, which is beautiful, gorgeous book. And this is like a more specific artist way for creatives. So for creatives that feel like I want to level up my art, or I sometimes hit these walls and I feel static or stagnant, and I wish I had a mentor. I wish I had somebody to really just like get with me in the studio and help me with my art when I hit a block, to give me little tricks to get out of it. That's what's in the book. And my hope is that it provides mentorship for artists who, don't have access to mentorship.
That's me.
Well, it'll be out in May.
Oh, I cannot wait, and I hope that I can get a copy to put up here in our beautiful display behind me for other artists to see, and we'll be recommending it in our Scene Projects book club. And yeah, thank you, Alexandra, for sharing so much with me today. It was beautiful to get to know you, and you are welcome back on any of our shows anytime you like. Get Better Together is one of our programs on the network that really allows us to get um, into the dirt, if you will. It's kind of how our community gets in and just talks about the stuff that's actually happened to us and how we came through it, and how it's made this version of ourselves exactly the people that you see in front of you now. So, Alexandra, just a pleasure talking to you this morning. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
That is Alexandra Beller. Remember to like and subscribe to all this stuff, and we will see you all next time. And remember to make yourself part of the scene.